to have Janet Johnson appointed to the position of clerk treasurer at a salary of $56,000 annually, one that is exempt from overtime, the position having been approved at the previous town board meeting,
Annual town, or special town meeting.
at the previous special town meeting,
Yeah.
excuse me.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Lowry,
Yes.
Barber,
Aye.
Cavazos.
Yes.
Goss,
Aye.
carries 4-0.
Next one.
Okay, I will move to have the town start recruiting for an office assistant as a part-time position of no more than 20 hours per week at an hourly salary commensurate with the applicant's skills and experience.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Goss,
Aye.
Lowry,
Aye.
Cavazos,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
carries 4-0.
And finally, I will move to amend the employment contract of the present clerk administrator to reflect the changing job description of the administrator.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Barber,
Aye.
Goss,
Aye.
Cavazos,
Aye.
Lowry,
Yes.
carries 4-0.
And just for everybody's edification, because Bud's contract right now is the administrator, the clerk administrator, we probably are going to add an addendum to that and just remove, with his understanding, the clerk's position from that. It just, we tried the issue of new 3-year contract, we got a little pushback on that. So we're going to continue with his current contract minus the clerk's position. And there's enough funds in the budget. We've worked all through this. There's certainly enough funds in the budget. If those of you that were at the budget hearing in November, remember there was $40,000 put in there to do the clerk administrator job, office assistant job, and so forth. So the funding is all there already, and we're looking at starting this the 1st of June. So we're already 6 months into the year, so there's plenty of cushion there. We're not, not going to be going overboard. So that being said, I'll make a motion that we adjourn the special board.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Lowry,
Yes.
Cavazos.
Yes.
Goss,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
carries 4-0.
Okay. Anybody want to break for a minute, or we should keep it rolling? Okay, we have a quorum. I'll call the May 6th meeting of 2015 to order for the Board of Supervisors, Town of Liberty Grove. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. If you have a cell phone, if you wouldn't mind putting it on vibrate or turning it off. And a reminder to talk into the microphones to the board. The clerk will note that Supervisor Mulligan is out of town and not in attendance this evening. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, next we need to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Farber, seconded by Gaz. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. We have the minutes of the April 15th board meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to those, please? Seeing none, I will move their approval as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Gaz. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Payment of bills. Are there any questions on the bills that have been presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the bills as presented.
Second? Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion is carried. Next is public input, and just a couple points before we go to that. I want to congratulate Janet on becoming a grandmother. I can now call her, yes. I can now call her Granny without getting in trouble, so. Congratulations, Janet, so. And also, I would like to read a proclamation from the Governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker. And it's the State of Wisconsin Office of the Governor Proclamation, whereas the Office of Municipal Clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world as the oldest profession among public servants. And whereas the municipal clerk provides a professional connection between the citizens and the governing bodies and agencies at the local, county, and state levels. And whereas municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all residents through transparency and accountable government practices. And whereas the municipal clerk processes and distributes all agendas and actions of their governing body, as well as serving as the official record keeper for the municipality, and the municipal clerk also issues licenses and permits, facilitates the annual board of review and municipal redistricting projects, attends various meetings of the municipality, and serves as a resource center on functions of the local government and the community. And whereas the 1,852 municipal clerks and 72 county clerks are key elements in the election administration by attending required training and dedicating themselves to providing fair, non-biased, nonpartisan, accurate, and responsible elections in Wisconsin. And whereas municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the responsibilities of the Office of Municipal Clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, focus groups, and annual conferences across Wisconsin. Now therefore, I, Scott Walker, Governor of the State of Wisconsin, do hereby proclaim May 3rd to May 9th, 2015 as Municipal Clerks Appreciation Week throughout the state of Wisconsin, and I commend this observance to all our citizens. Thank you, Bud.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next is public input, and it's an opportunity to address the board on any subject and also on any agendized item. And we'll first start out if anybody has comments to make on anything other than an agendized item. If they'd step up to the podium, please. Go ahead, Lon.
Do I have to identify myself?
Sure. You're on YouTube.
Oh, no. I'm Lon Kapitsky, and my wife Ruth. We own the house on Garrett Bay Road, 12037, the brick house across from the cider house. And there's always been a traffic problem there. And now the cider house is expanding, and so that'll compound the problem. And the pottery shop that's going into the old Birch Branch. And so we circulated a petition asking that possibly parking could be on one side of the road only, preferably on the east side. And you want the petitions, or?
Yes, please. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
And there's no right angles on Garrett Bay Road where it meets the highway and Lakeview. And so as a result, it's pretty confusing for people that get there for the first time. Could we possibly paint something on the blacktop there or something? Well, I guess we're really concerned because our daughter and husband live in a house with 2 small children. And the traffic has always been an issue, and it isn't going to get any better. And I'm not really clear what can be done, but I wish something could be done.
Okay. We have the chairman of the highway committee here. We'll refer it to his committee. No.
Did I cover it? Did I cover it?
Well, we would like to see the, either parking on one side of the road, or at least paint the center of the road, so cars aren't parking in one lane. Sometimes people stop the car in almost the lane of traffic. It's very confusing for a tourist or somebody who hasn't been there before. And certainly, we're in favor of the cider house and the pottery, that's not the problem. It's the traffic that, and it's always been a problem, but I think it will increase.
There has been discussion, and I believe we were going to paint a center line coming off of 42, and that has not been done at this point. Maybe we can extend that center line on up to the Old School Road.
Well, there are times when a person sits, they're gonna make a left-hand
Right.
turn, and you don't, when you're turning, you don't know if you're gonna go on which
Right.
side, because he's in the middle of the intersection. And likewise, coming from the other way, by the Gills Rock Stoneware, or Pottery there, you wanna make a left-hand turn, and you've got parking right up to the corner, and you cannot see until you're out in the traffic lane.
Okay. Okay? Thank you.
Do I give it to Mike?
Yeah, go ahead and give it to Mike first, and then I'm sure he'll give it to us, so.
What I understand your concern is that you want a clear delineation of traffic lanes, parking spots, and center line rights
That
of way.
would be a
Is
big
that about
help,
it?
yes. The other thought is too, if you would maybe put a crosswalk somewhere where the people.
Oh, that's DOT approval and that's
Well, we won't
moving
worry.
mountains.
If we could do something just.
Well, first should paint.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's up to us.
Garrett Bay is our road as far as the crosswalk,
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
but if they park on the east side,
Yeah.
we don't need the crosswalk.
But we have.
Okay. Carol?
Hi, Carol Moronic, East Door Bluff Road, Ellison Bay. I thought it would be a good idea today, since my husband Jim and I attended the Airport and Parks Committee meeting, to give you a quick report, if that, I think you would be interested, since you were all very, very interested in in helping to bring about the outcome of the motion made in January of reversing the plan to cut the trees. For the last several meetings, I know Nancy was at the one in April, they have been talking about the fact that there was going to be an ad hoc, 7-member ad hoc committee formulated or from volunteers who had offered to serve to address certain concerns about the management plan and the educational aspects that had been talked about back in January, and then report back to the committee. And this motion was made January, March, and April, different forms of it. It was kind of morphing into some other kind of thing, but basically they still were planning to form this committee based on people who from mostly Liberty Grove who were volunteering. And they did read off a list of people who were interested. However, since that time, another committee, working group called the DSIST, let me see, I've got so many papers here. The DSIST Emerald Ash Borer Working Group has been formed, which is comprised of representatives from many different environmental groups, Land Trust, DNR, Soil and Water, invasive species, that would be the DSIS group, of Door County Invasive Species Team. I'm probably forgetting some, but they basically have had at least 2 meetings already, and Eric Allison, who is the administrator for the Parks Department, is also serving on that working group committee. And as a result of that, he mentioned to me on Friday that he was really reticent about forming this ad hoc group that they originally were going to form, because he felt that it was not necessary yet in view of this other group that was working together and having meetings to address the issue. There was the DSIS, the person who is leading that is named Greg Colthorst. He was at the meeting today, and is a very, very agreeable man and very informed, and he gave a lot of interesting information about what they've discussed so far. The good news is that a lot of groups, such as apparently Land Trust and Nature Conservancy, do not want to have any of their lands have the trees cut, and perhaps just leave them as they are, which is what we had all wanted here as well for our park. And anyway, they are still, continuing to work on this, and I myself felt very strongly that there's no reason why they shouldn't have still gone ahead to form this, or the original group that was going to be created based on people who wanted to be involved in helping to get the plan formulated as we had hoped it would be. However, and at this meeting, Joel Gunlinson tried very, very hard to convince the committee that they really have a mandate to adhere to this motion that was made January, March, and April, and go ahead and form this ad hoc committee. Unfortunately, one member of the committee, Ken Fisher, was just really very, very much against it, and did a lot of talking about why it wasn't necessary and so forth, and eventually they did take a vote and decided that the best thing to do right now is to delay the ad hoc committee forming right now, but invite those people who would volunteer to attend the meetings of the DSIS group, which I think is a great idea, which should be happening anyway, and that they would be in contact with anyone who wants the information by just calling Greg and giving him your email address, and he will send you all the information as to what has already transpired and what meetings are going to be coming up. And generally, there's one a month, and usually on Thursdays, and it will be at the Government Center. It was disappointing, but actually, though, I think it's a good idea to have this other committee, the DSIS committee, working, because they have a lot of very knowledgeable people on that committee, and I think we will all learn from this. But I am very concerned still that this whole plan, the thing that we were so happy about in January, may never happen. So I think it's very important that we stay involved and go to those meetings. Get yourself on that committee too, and hope that eventually the park will still, be standing. Maybe some dead trees, who knows, but it will still remain a sanctuary forever, as we all hoped it would. So you can contact him at the Soil and Water Conservation Department. I believe Greg is in the Soil and Water Department, and I think is I enjoyed talking with him afterwards. He's very knowledgeable and very helpful, and I think he's thinking the same way we have been as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else, general comments, please? Agendized items. Mike?
Number 10, please.
Thank you. Darcy? Anybody else, please? Okay, then let's go on to the committee assignments. This is going to be kind of a several meeting procedure. First off, Fred Anderson has asked to be removed from the Finance Committee due to a lot of commitments that he has, and I have been in contact with somebody who has indicated that they are interested, had a few more questions, and I'll get back to that person tomorrow. He was not here tonight, therefore, until he is here, I'm not going to, there's some changes in committees, and I'm going to appoint him to different committees and so forth, but without him being here, I don't want to do that. I learned my lesson with Lou. The Plan Commission, I would nominate Nancy Gaz as chairman. The chair has the position to be able to nominate the chairman of the commission, so I will place Nancy's name in nomination as chair.
Second that.
Second, Lou. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And then we also have Kate Houston up for a 3-year term, and Diane Kirkland is stepping off of the Plan Commission, and Mike Barkey has agreed to go on the Plan Commission. So I will nominate Kate Houston to another 3-year term, and Mike Barkey to a 3-year term.
Let me step in
Sure.
quickly. I talked with Kate just recently,
Okay.
and she would like to step down.
Okay.
She is agreeable to serving until we find a good person, but she does not want another 3-year term.
Can you function,
We will still have 7.
You'll still-
She'll stay on until we find someone. So we have the full required 7.
okay, all right, then I'll take her name off the,
Yeah.
nomination and simply nominate Mike.
Barkey,
Yes,
I would second that.
discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. I would also like to nominate Lou to replace Frank on the library board, if he will. So he has a background in library,
Yeah.
so is there a second, please?
I'll second
Second.
that. Yeah.
Tie for second. Any other discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. And I will come back at the next meeting, hopefully filling in those slots, so, okay? All right, let's go on to the Plan Commission recommendation, conditional use permit. Nancy?
Yes, our,
Oh.
Oh, point of order, point of order.
Oh.
Is Kate's term officially up?
Yep.
Okay, so you didn't reappoint her,
No.
so I don't think she can serve if you don't reappoint her,
oh, I see.
even though she wants to stay on until we find somebody, so you
Sure.
should probably,
She could at that time, if somebody else wanted to serve, if we find someone,
Yeah.
then she could step down. Sure, she would. If I tell her that's the way it has to be, she was.
Okay, so we'll nominate her back for a 3-year term, and she can, okay.
Right, she can.
Then I will place Kate back on the nomination for a 3-year term. That's a good point. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay. My agenda is a little bit different than the one on the board. My apology for that. Consider Fitzgerald Park for Sagbra bicycle event. Darcy, I believe. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Darcy Pills from Door County North. I just wanted to ask the board to approve the use of Fitzgerald Park for the Sagbra Tour. What, I think you're all aware of the bicycle tour that's coming up, and their group needs some space for between 100 and 150 tents. And they went up and they looked at the site, and they're very happy with Fitzgerald Park. And they're going to be split, so there will be some indoor camping at the Women's Club. They have their shower trucks and everything that will be used. And then their outdoor camping, since there's not space at the Women's Club, they want to have it at Fitzgerald Park. Now, those people, they are going to have to ride their own bikes back and forth for transportation, so the closer, the better. But I just wanted to say, I think there's a little worry about noise, pollution, and things going on at the park, but the average rider is about 55 years old, and just, they will have been riding their bikes for 60 miles on August 4th. So I'm assuming they're gonna be really tired. So they're not gonna be too noisy on the 4th. The 5th is a free day. But when I talked to the coordinator for the Sagbra ride, both him and his wife will be staying on the grounds of Fitzgerald Park. And he also said they would not need any generators, so there won't be any generator noise. And they are aware that it's a residential area. So they will make sure that their riders are aware of that and ask them to be quiet while, relatively quiet while they stay there. And that any activities that they do would be off the grounds of the Fitzgerald Park. So it's just something that I think would be nice to provide for our riders. In total, there'll be about 400 signed up that we'll see on August 4th, 5th, and 6th. So I would just ask the board to approve that.
Okay. Go ahead.
Darcy, I have no problem with Fitzgerald Park, but I had understood from when Sagbra was here, was that Parks and Property? Is that what they?
They were gonna be out at.
They were gonna be at the
Fire station.
North Fire Station.
Yeah, originally, that's what they wanted. They looked at that property. And I think what happened was they kind of went on a tour after we went to that meeting. And they saw the Fitzgerald Park, and it's a little closer, and they said that they thought it was a little more flat for their tents. And they liked the location better. So they came back wanting to stay at the Fitzgerald Park.
Board?
I would make a motion to allow Sagbra to camp at Fitzgerald Park on that night.
I'll second. Discussion?
Do we have to make any extra precautions to make sure we keep the dogs off the park between now and then? Or is that not an issue anymore?
Campers beware.
Campers beware.
The only reservation I have, and I don't want to be, throw a monkey wrench into anything, is Fitzgerald Park large enough? It's not as large an area. And then the other concern I would have is that that's a very popular park in the summertime, and will it be taking up space that visitors may be enjoying? I mean, granted, Sagbra is visitors, but they're moving in. Whereas at the North Fire Station, that's wide open, and they can set up the community there. And that's all. I have nothing whatsoever against the tour and them coming here, but I am concerned about them taking up all the space for a period of time.
What if we offer them both spots?
I could do that and talk to him and see what he wants to do.
Sure.
You mean like split up, half?
Yeah, because that's going to be, that's a lot of tents, if you will, in a relatively small area.
They're gonna utilize the ball field.
Oh, just the ball field, not the grass area?
I'm pretty sure they're talking up in the ball field area.
Oh, that
Oh.
changes things.
That
Yeah, that
changes
definitely
things.
changes things. I had visions of the whole corner there being covered with tents. Okay.
Okay.
There's no ball games scheduled,
Not anymore.
not anymore?
They're usually done by July.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I understand the question in reference to the dogs. So, okay. It's, well, anyway.
Don't go there.
Well, should I hold a second and just say to the ball field at Fitzgerald Park?
I would specify the
Yeah,
area.
Yeah.
I'll pull the second on that. Okay.
So
The motion dies for lack of a second.
I'll restate the motion would be to allow Sagbra to use the ball field at Fitzgerald Park on the night of August 4th, was it?
Fourth and
5th,
fifth.
for the nights of August 4th and 5th.
Second. Discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Now, Nancy.
Okay, the Plan Commission heard the request to expand the seating area to outdoors at the Cider House, and they already have the permit for serving alcohol, so this was just an expansion of the conditional use. And their application, which was very thoroughly filled out and complete, everything was in order, and our commission voted unanimously to approve the conditional use, primarily because it did address a lot of the concerns that our guidelines ask us to look at, and it is consistent with several other businesses in Ellison Bay, such as the Viking and Brew House, for expanded outdoor seating. We did have a little bit of discussion about traffic concerns, and along with some of the things that Lonnie and Ruth Ann talked about during public comment, one of the issues as well is the speed that people go there. And with that entrance from 42 to Garrett Bay Road the way it is, it's like a crack the whip. People just come shooting out of there and shooting into there, and we've had complaints, many complaints over the years about the speed in that area. And along with Highway Committee looking at, the center lines and delineating the highway, et cetera there, I'd suggest maybe that we consider putting the traffic counter there for a while, just to have a calming effect when those lights go on, when people are speeding, until that gets done, or at least for a time to just kind of slow things down. Because people do just shoot right into and out of there. So, got off on a tangent here. I would make a motion that the board authorize our administrator to send a letter of support to the RPC for the conditional use request for sale and consumption of alcoholic cider off and on premises, including outdoor patio seating for Magnetic North at 1040 Garrett Bay Road.
I'll second that motion. Discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And I recused myself, so I'm recusing myself from the vote now.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mike, that might be something Highway wants to really take a look at now, because there's going to be a lot more activity on that section of Garrett Bay Road, so
How about a couple of speed bumps?
that might work.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
That is a good idea.
Can't
That might be the only
You
thing
can't do
that'll
it, though.
do it.
Can't do it.
Can't do it. And I will tell you, the traffic counter works. Those lights go off, bang. So. And I did tell Jay if he thought that was going to slow my wife down, it's not working. So, anyway.
Maybe a speed bump.
Okay, going on, consider amending budget to increase public works expenditure by $35,000. This is basically a little bookkeeping on our part, from the standpoint that the budget that was passed does not reflect this, and this is going to amend that budget. The money is already there, so it was approved at the spring annual meeting. So I'll make a motion to amend the 2015 budget by increasing capital expenditures for highway purposes by $35,000 to expedite paving of Garrett Bay Road and repair the apron in front of the sand salt building as authorized by the town meeting of April 21st, 2015. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Second. Discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, consider application of ordinance 199 regarding cleanup of various parcels. Mike? You wanted to speak on this one? Yes. Please. Thank you.
This subject has been discussed in the past from time to time based upon the conditions of properties throughout the town of Liberty Grove going from bad to worse. There is a political reluctance, to put it politely, to tell people to clean up their properties, simply because in some cases the property owners are not in good health. In other cases, they don't have what is considered a good financial picture. And there's some other reasons as well, and some, I guess there's two things that essentially led to my letter to the board, of which I don't want to mention specific property owners in particular, because I think we all know who they are. But there has to be, I think, a little more aggression by the board to take on these situations that are not good. And the thing that tripped my trigger was the sale of a property in Ellison Bay that had been owned by the property owner for 10 years, and 2.5 years after he bought it, he put it for sale, and it took him 7.5 years to sell it. And in my opinion, and in that of others who are very familiar with that situation, it's because the properties on both sides of this property were not adequately, and still aren't adequately, cleaned up. Now, the individual lost something like $35,000 from what he paid for it to what he sold it for. And you might say, well, that's his problem, but it really, if a public nuisance stems from the town's reluctance to enforce an ordinance, i.e. ordinance number 199, which was enacted in January of '99, so it's been an ordinance obviously on the books for 16 years. And the properties, and I have to admit some responsibility in that, because when my office was over there in what is now the storeroom, I used to pester the town board members because I would run into assessment situations. And I was fairly reluctant at that time to beat the drum too loudly, because I'm sure the response, and was to me, made a couple of times, well, you just want the property so you can raise my taxes. And I chuckle at that, but for that reason didn't pursue it as I am now. Now that I'm retired, no longer the assessor, I feel a little more eager to pursue it, and I think it should be pursued, because it's not helping the little hamlet of Ellison Bay when most of the property owners are very conscientious. I mean, you think about Mrs. Newman that literally rode her building down during the explosion that happened, and rebuilt, and others, the Lindens at the old Lutheran church, and again, I think you all know that there's plenty of examples in Ellison Bay that the property owners are keeping their properties up. So my point is not to point fingers or get angry or anything else, and I have a little handout that I'm going to hand to the board entitled Hovels, Dumps, and Junkyards, Northern Door County, which I am going to begin to pursue with the Door County Planning Department. To give you one obvious example that every one of us in this room have driven by is on the corner of 42 and 57, where the C&W junkyard is, and there's an auto salvage yard proceeding due west for about a mile, and next to that, right on the highway, are 6 buildings that are dilapidated, deteriorated, falling down, abandoned, not habitable, etc. And everybody coming to Northern Door County has to go by that building, those buildings. And there's really no reason for that to continue. That's not your problem, I realize. But I do think I would be, as I said in my letter, I would like to get the board to commit to some kind of concrete action regarding some of these properties. Because not to do so, as in the case I recited in the letter, has cost a property owner money. I'll stop there and entertain any questions that any of you have of me.
Any questions?
I affirm what Mike has done and will continue to do. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
I brought to the town's attention, for example, the property on Garrett Bay Road. It seems to be that little stretch of road is getting a lot of attention tonight. To have rusted appliances sitting out on the front lawn. Granted, the doors of the refrigerator have been removed for safety's sake, I assume. Freezers and appliances that are rusted, sitting out there. I mean, and everybody who goes to the post office and anywhere down Garrett Bay Road, which is one of the town's most scenic spots, has to pass that property, for example, as well. I mean, if there was a resident who decided to shoot a cannon off every hour on the hour, day and night, the town would never stand for that. It would be too much of a nuisance. If somebody decided to burn tires on their front lawn every day, and the odor permeated everything, the town would never stand for something like that. Anything visually that egregious, I think, needs to have the same kind of attention. And then if everybody recalls too, when we were talking about the Valet Motel, the owner of the Valet Motel's legal counsel pointed out that that property was singled out as the only property that was such a nuisance, and therefore that was discriminatory. I think it's incumbent on the town to add to that list, because there are other properties that are as egregious, so that in the future, that argument that legal counsel made can never be used again, because then it wouldn't be discriminatory by singling out one property owner as opposed to a number of the other ones, some of which Mike has already pointed out, as I've mentioned as well.
Two points I'd like to make in response to what you just said. There are two examples that I can recite to you of a good thing. One is the Carr property on the corner of Garrett Bay Road and Maplewood, where they had that old barn. That's been taken off the, razed, demolished, taken away. And as has Mitch Larson's old picker quarter houses on the corner, or picker quarter building on the corner of Old Stage and 42. So there are people that, and I have talked to Mitch more than once, just one-on-one about that. And but it shouldn't be where the town, and I realize the political reluctance to do that. It shouldn't be that it takes a motion and the sheriff showing up and so on. But as I pointed out previously, and as well to a couple of the villages, that ordinance 199 is a darn good ordinance. It has the tools for the town to just put it on automatic pilot, send a policeman over there from the county, recite the problems, and specifically, how many junk cars or how many old refrigerators, whatever, and then allow a reasonable amount of time for that to be taken up. And again, Bud and I talked about this, and I said, if a group of us wanted to go over and help this person out, I understand one of the property owners now isn't scanned, fine. But the only danger in that is that, to go back to what you said, somebody else subsequent to that says, well, you cleaned up his property, why don't you clean up mine? So it would have to be on a volunteer ad hoc basis. It couldn't be anything I wouldn't think you would want to try to write into an ordinance. So there are efforts that people have done the right thing, and I think sometimes a letter from the town would perhaps suffice for some of these other ones too. I know that this property on NP, I don't know what that situation is now, but there was a lot of give and take, and well, we'll get back to you, and some dates drawn in the sand, and nothing seems to have happened that much. All I'm saying is, I think we need to be, to reflect what you're saying, more matter-of-fact about these things, rather than to hold somebody up for ridicule or saying that you're picking on them. I think it is that easy.
Okay,
Any other questions? Okay.
thank you. I had a call this morning from Peter Redden, who couldn't be here tonight. He had meetings in Sheboygan, expressing concern also about the property values and what is happening. He's property owner, adjacent property owner in Ellison Bay as well. I'm not sure everybody is aware of the fact, excuse me, letters have been sent and to the Cepelonis owner, and as well to the NP owner, and obviously as well to the old Valet Motel. We've been lenient, especially with the Valet Motel and also the NP owner. There's been an attempt at the Valet. It's somewhat cleaned up. It's, well, I guess I'll leave it at that. So the question before the board is, do we enforce the ordinance? And I believe, Bud, am I correct that the ordinance has a fine of 200 a day, or?
There's monetary considerations in there, and whenever this has come to discussion again, it's the same old story. Well, I don't have enough money for that, let alone clean up. Go ahead and fine me and send me to jail. I don't care. So that's what we get time and again.
Yeah.
So NP, we were out there with John Teichler. It's over a year ago now, I think.
Yeah.
A year ago last fall. And that was to be revisited again, but John didn't contact us to follow through on it. He was gonna come in. I remember we were out there in the rain that one day. The ballet has made progress. I've talked with the owner. It's a family thing, a case of them agreeing on a course of action. And I know Scott's in Scand up there. I don't know what his reaction would be. I had thought about going and just talking to him one-on-one to see if he'd be amenable to have some volunteers take care of that place, but I haven't done that at this point.
Thoughts?
One of the other thoughts that I have on this is, based on the experience we've had with the county with the valet property, we get tough and draw a line in the sand with our ordinance, and then they give them a year under county zoning. And I've wondered too, recently going past the valet, well, you know, that's not really cleaned up. It's not exactly what we had in mind, the way it's left. But I believe the resolution that we made at the time was, it had to satisfy the county and us. And what happens when the county says, well, yeah, it looks okay, and we say no? It's not as cut and dried and black and white as just simply applying the ordinance. I respectfully disagree with you, Mike. I'm not, I don't want to be, you know, wimpy and soft either, but at the same time, I don't want to be so hardcore that somebody who is sick or who doesn't have the money to barely scrape together enough food on the table to have a crew come in and demolish their building. There's a lot more to it than just clean it up or else. And I don't know, you know, and then you've got, you know, you say it's politically inconvenient, I think was the word you may have used. Politics is probably the least of it. You don't want to come off looking like a tyrant, but at the same time, you don't want to be a tyrant.
No, excuse me, Mike. Mike, there's technically no give and take here. Carl, you were not on the list, however, the chair has the prerogative. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I might, in all due modesty, suggest the possibility of a third way here, and that is the possibility of issuing a letter to the owner of the property saying, if you can't afford to clean it up and we don't want to throw you in jail and we don't want to take you to court because nobody wins that way, why not send in a crew to clean it up and then put a lien on the property that will accrue when the property is sold, and that way it's out of their hands, it's out of our hands, and allows us to move forward on this thing without all the to and froing of their health problems or financial problems or anything else. Just a thought.
Good, thank you. Go ahead.
If you read the ordinance, that's exactly what it does. If you look at that ordinance carefully, if the property remains a mess, you have the property cleaned up, you send the property owner a bill if he or she won't do it on their own. If the bill is not paid, there's a lien put on the property. That stays on the property until it is sold. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to show up and snarl at the owners or anything else. And it took the town board of January of '99 something like 3 to 4 years to put this thing together carefully so that it wouldn't seem like Hitler was in town making people do something they didn't want to do to their property. But again, you have people that live next door to these situations, and I pointed that out in the letter, that the property right next door to Valet has been for sale for a long time. And Mr. Redden, John brought up Mr. Redden's name. I mean, John, you're always at the forefront of these ideas about ideas in town to stimulate tourism, to stimulate people coming here. Well, what's stimulating? I mean, how can you look at some of these situations and say that's any kind of stimulant? That's something this town should be ashamed of. And again, you have the tools to do it. I'll stop now.
Okay.
Yeah, and the lien is obviously a way of being able to ultimately get reimbursed, so to speak, when the property is transferred. Obviously, the town would have to pick up the bill for the cleanup in the interim. They float the loan for the cleanup. But at the same time, if we're judicious about which properties need to be cleaned up, and I have no idea what something like that would cost when a junk hauler would come and just remove rusted refrigerators and freezers and things like that. But at the same time, I think it's incumbent on the town to at least present its best foot forward with egregious properties such as the ones we were talking about.
I have a couple more comments I want to make. And I agree with what both Mike and Lou are saying. I really do. But reality is something that sometimes gets in the way. In at least one of these properties that we've been dealing with for years and years and years, I believe, deeply believe, that it was more than just a lack of wanting to clean up. I believe we were dealing with a psychological issue. What happens? Let me just play devil's advocate. What happens when the town spends the money and goes in and cleans up a property, hopefully without the owner saying, you're taking away my property, I'm going to sue you. Hopefully it just gets cleaned up. What happens when that person, especially if there's a psychological hoarding disorder involved, starts to reclutter immediately? Do we go in and clean it up again? and put more lien on? And at what point does the lien exceed the property value, depending on how long the hoarder lives? I just want to underscore the point that it's not that simple. The ordinance makes it as simple as we can, but we have to realize that there are things that will complicate the beauty and the simplicity of the ordinance.
Okay, decision time. I'm with,
What you could do to, if you wanna do a little testing of this whole deal is, ask your building inspectors to go in and make an inspection. And then see how far we get with that, because the last time we proposed that,
they wouldn't let them on.
the threat was, you're not gonna get on it because I'll get a court order to stop you and, I'll have you in court right now, but we didn't do it. If you wanna actually do it and see if they go that far, that would be an option, I guess.
Is that a service that they do?
The building inspectors?
Yes.
We'd probably get charged something
Yeah.
for it, but they can do it.
Well, it appears that at least we have three options on the table: do nothing, request the building inspectors to go on the property, which we're assuming will probably, in at least one case, have the property uninhabitable. And the third is to simply send a letter to the property owners informing them that, give them X number of days, or the town will go, well, you wouldn't even have to do that, offer the town will go in and clean it and put a lien on the property, enforcing the ordinance in effect.
Doesn't Valor Motel already have a lien on it?
I have no idea.
Because we put that dumpster in there.
Well, that was a volunteer.
It was volunteer.
That was volunteer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the, not to avoid the question, because I do think that I would support enforcing the ordinance, but at the same time, in the redrafting of the comprehensive plan, we're actually on the chapter on housing. And in that chapter, the plan commission's version of the comprehensive plan encourages volunteerism, education and volunteerism in the community to clean up what can be done. And maybe, in addition to the letter citing the ordinance, maybe there could be an alternative, a suggestion, I should say, that maybe, and that's like the Ellison Bay Service Club or something like that would have to be consulted first before the letter went out, to be able to say maybe the offending property owner might be able to call upon a community organization to help with the cleanup as well. In addition to the idea of a lien and a date certain as to when things should be done.
I would move that we take and send a letter based on the ordinance to the offending property owners, and also CC that letter to the building inspector in Sturgeon Bay asking for their cooperation in enforcing it.
Is there a second?
Now, are we talking about specific properties right now, or just the one on Garrett Bay Road? There's-
No property was mentioned.
No.
That I think we'd have to decide, no?
Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of a second.
And here's just one of the little snags of this whole beautiful ordinance is who actually, by what criteria? I mean, we all know when we see an egregious offender that, oh, wow, that's a mess, that has to be cleaned up. But it's the details. Who actually decides which properties and for what reason get those letters. And I think in order to avoid or at least successfully navigate any kind of litigation which may arise and has already arisen in one case, we need to have those things very clearly defined, lest the finger get pointed at, well, you're picking on me, why not so-and-so? And that's the part of the ordinance that isn't there, that people don't see. It's just, yes, but we need a definition.
Okay, we have 3 properties that have already been notified. One of those properties is probably the only one that's uninhabitable at this point in time. The other 2 properties, it's a matter of a collection of whatever you want to call it in the yard. The first property also has that problem.
And they're also
So-
have legal counsel.
Well, it's, you know, I'm sure the NP one has a legal counsel as well, I would think, so. So I'm gonna make a motion that we request the building inspector to go, it would be the valet property, to determine if the property is inhabitable.
We're just doing one at a time. Just to determine whether the property.
If the property is inhabitable. If it's not inhabitable, well, that's a
whether
good
it's
question.
habitable.
Well, if it's, okay, well, how does the county ordinance read on that? I'm not sure of that.
Don't know. And foreseeing the answer, the answer is, nobody's living there, so why do you even want to bother?
Yeah.
So leave me alone. There's nobody but living there. But can still,
Then I'll make a
Go through
motion that commencing June 1, considering the time element that has been provided for cleanup at the valet, commencing June 1, the enforcement of ordinance 199 takes effect.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'll make a motion that considering the time element that has been involved, the property on NP has not been cleaned up, and beginning June 1, the enforcement of ordinance 1-99 will commence.
I'll second that one.
Discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Then I'll make a motion that we send a letter to the Cepilonis, to Scott, that the town would entertain going in and assisting a cleanup of the property, and that any cost involved would be placed as a lien on the property.
And any specific time frame?
90 days.
Second that.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Tower agreement.
have not been returned as of
Oh.
today. We have corresponded with Nate and with Mr. Bruce. We have the wording agreed to. He just has not come forward with those two basically identical agreements for the two sites.
Okay.
And a couple of changes, minor changes on the other one that we agreed to were date, extending the effective date till October 1st and deleting the brand of tower because he found a different brand that he likes better. We've got the one here, but he's apparently gonna get another one, different one.
Okay. Launch pass applications.
There
There are none. Operator licenses? There are none.
All right.
Oh, the beloved correspondence isn't here.
That's next meeting.
Oh. Future meetings.
There are none. Okay. Tomorrow at 2 PM at the Government Center, the Schaefer conditional use permit will be heard by the RPC. Next Wednesday, the 13th, Plan Commission meets at 7 o'clock. There are no pending zoning issues, so it'll be on the comprehensive plan, I assume. 18th, Fire Board meets at 8 AM. On the 20th, the Board of Review will meet at 6:45 to meet and adjourn according to statute, and tentatively adjourning until August 19th. At that time, followed at 7 o'clock by the Town Board. Monday, the 25th, the hall and office will be closed. On the 26th, there are DOT information meetings in the village for businesses at 8 AM and 5:30 PM. Plan Commission is scheduled again for the 27th, and that takes us up till June.
Okay. All right, before I make a motion,
John, wait a minute.
oh,
UW Oshkosh called and asked to use the town hall for another water sample, the big water sample tests like they did from Stevens Point. So on the 12th, that'll be the pickup day for people to come and pick up their bottles.
okay,
And the 13th will be the day to bring
Bring 'em
them
back.
back in with the sample.
okay.
I don't have any other information for cost. So
Can you
that's
find
all
out?
that I have. I just know that it will be the 12th and 13th
Okay.
for those big comprehensive water
Is
tests.
that of June? or-
Yeah.
Okay.
June.
June,
Good.
June 12th and 13th.
Townwide volunteering again? For anybody that wants their
And-
water
and
tested?
this is not just Liberty Grove.
Right, it
This
can
is the
be.
entire county.
Okay,
But they'd like to collect up here
Here.
because they want as many people up here to participate.
sure,
Are they advertising this?
They're going to, yeah.
okay. All right, before we adjourn, as we're kind of getting into this little tradition, I don't have a rule tonight. I just have a quote from a gentleman by the name of Norman Cousins. Nothing is more beautiful or powerful than an individual acting out his or her conscience, thus helping to bring the collective conscience to life. I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, people.